So in the highly anticipated matchup in the Cyhawk series between Iowa and Iowa State, there's a lot of expectation that this year would be a really close meet, just like last year. Last year was decided by 1 point, with the final match being at 133 pounds between Austin DeSanto and Austin Gomez. Gomez, at a point, looked as though he was going to be able to pin DeSanto and actually win the meet for Iowa State. DeSanto was able to avoid that, though. Ended up just losing a decision and hanging on for Iowa to get the win. But this year, people expected that it would be another close meet, and there was a chance, depending on a couple of swing matches, that Iowa State could potentially take this. Not exactly how it worked out, so let's just go from match 1 to match 10. First match was Spencer Lee versus Alex Mackel. This match happened last year. Lee, I believe, was dealing with, or at least was recovering from, I don't remember what kind of infection it was. I think it was mono is what they were saying it was. And he wasn't expected to wrestle at that meet, but because the meet was so close, he decided to wrestle rather than have the backup come in, and was able to pick up a major decision win where he really faded at the end. Didn't have a chance to fade at the end of this one, though. Ended up getting a first period tech fall over Mackel. Here's the 4-point near fall when he was already up 11 to make it a 15-point lead and end up getting the win for him. Next match was Austin DeSanto versus Todd Small. It seems as though Gomez isn't quite yet ready to make weight, so he wasn't in the lineup. Tough to say if Gomez is in the lineup, if Gomez actually is able to replicate what happened last year and get the win here. That was a close match. DeSanto and Gomez then, I don't believe they, actually I think they did face each other. I think DeSanto won in the back draw at NCAAs. But either way, we didn't get that match, which I'm sure would have been a little bit more exciting to see. But even still, DeSanto was able to get the win here. Was really trying to work for a tech fall at the end. Wasn't able to get it. Here he was getting a little bit aggravated with the refs who had blown the whistle while his foot was still in. So he was pointing at the yellow part of the mat. And then at the end, with an 11-point lead, decided he just wanted to keep going. And it was kind of right as the whistle went, but he went from having having a hold of his leg to then kind of like jumping over to take the back. And a lot of fans in attendance didn't like that. They thought it was a little bit extra. They thought he was showboating in a way, and it wasn't all that popular. But compared to what we've seen from DeSanto last year, I think this is one of those things where you just kind of brush it off and don't really think too much of it. Then at 141, rather than getting Max Murin in to face off against Ian Parker, we got Carter Happel. I believe Max Murin is still the starter for Iowa at 141. It's possible that right now he's dealing with a little bit of injury. And I know one of the things that a lot of people talk about, especially with the Arizona State versus Penn State meet, is, oh, yeah, well, it doesn't matter because nothing matters until March. And that's like the saying that just keeps going on. And it's a saying that usually you hear from the losing side of something in wrestling. But that's not entirely true, because what happens in March is largely predicated on what happens even now in November, because in all the brackets, every single person who is in the national tournament bracket is seeded from 1 to 32 or 1 to 33 even. So if Max Murin isn't quite ready to go here and he takes a loss against a guy who maybe under better circumstances he beats, that definitely affects his seeding, and that seeding could definitely affect how far he goes in March. So while it kind of sucks they didn't wrestle here, it is possible that Murin is still the guy at 141 for Iowa, and they just felt that he wasn't at his best right now, and it wasn't worth risking a possible loss to a lower-ranked guy in Parker, because right now Murin is number 9 and Parker would be number 13. But very close match between Happel and Parker. Happel seemed to fade a little bit towards the end, and then in overtime, in the first set victory period, Parker was able to get a takedown and win. Next match was between Lugo and Deegan. Lugo looked really good on the feet. On the mat, he had a lot of trouble here, though. This was a rematch from last year as well. Deegan won in Carver Hawkeye. Lugo was able to get the win here, but not without controversy. So he gets a takedown. I believe that was in the first 3-minute period. Deegan gets an escape. And then when Lugo was off of his back, there was a brief period where it seems as though one of the refs, not the main ref, but a side ref, saw there being locked hands at the start of a sequence that ended with Lugo at first appearing to get a 2-point reversal, but then Deegan then getting on top here where he almost had Lugo pinned. So it looked as though Deegan was about to run away with this match. Can't really see it on this one, but here you see the ref making the locked hands sign. So they go to review it just to confirm that there was locked hands. They confirmed that there was locked hands. So rather than Lugo being down by as many as 4, if not 6 points, instead he's actually now up by 1 because there's a point taken away, or a point given to him for the locked hands penalty on Deegan. So then they restart. Lugo gets away. Deegan tries to go for another takedown at the end of the match. Looks as though he's pretty close to getting it, but evidently this one was also reviewed, and they determined that the takedown was not completed in time or before the match had ended. So Lugo escapes with the victory here, although it's one of those matches where if these guys go at it again, it's not as though this it's not as though this result really tells you really strongly what's going to happen the next time around. I mean, Lugo did look better on the feet, but he's going to be able to have to get off his back or be able to get off the ground when he's down. And if Dagan's able to ride him like he was in this match, it could be problems in the future because he barely got away with the win here. Next match was between Caleb Young and David Carr. David Carr is ranked number 19 right now, or at least he was because he's a freshman, but he was an elite recruit. I think a lot of people expect him to be a real contender for, at the very least, All-American, if not for a title this year. And he had his opportunity here against the number 2 guy, Caleb Young, to prove that. Very close match. Early on, Young was getting a little bit closer on his shots than Carr was, but as the match wore on, Carr was starting to find his openings, was getting in deep on shots. Young was showing some fantastic defense, not to give any points, but eventually, with a little under 30 seconds left, Carr is finally able to take him down. Locks up a cradle as well, and then is able to get a quick near fall here. It was just a 2-point near fall, so he ends up winning 6-1. So a big win for Carr. For Young, not the best performance for him, I guess. He showed a lot of great defense. Showed some decent offense, but really wasn't ever that close to finishing on a takedown. There was one in the first period where they ended up going out of bounds. But for him, you try to look at the success he had early on and try to replicate that. The defense is pretty good, but if you're an Iowa State fan and you know a rematch is coming up between the two, I think you'd have a little bit more confidence now than you had going into this first match. Then at 165, we had Alex Marinelli versus Chase Straw. Straw actually landed a takedown early. So a match that I think some people expected Marinelli to score bonus points in didn't end up working out that way. But as the match wore on, it seemed as though Straw was getting worn out, and Marinelli was coming on strong. Ended up scoring a handful of takedowns in the third period, and then ends up getting the decision win here. Next match we had Michael Kemmerer versus Marcus Coleman. Kemmerer kind of building off of his success from the Chattanooga duel, just continuing to fight for takedowns. Very good on top, very hard for guys to get off from bottom against him. Wasn't able to turn Coleman, which probably would have made it a lot easier for him to score some more bonus points, but even still was able to get a major decision win here. Then the match that is going to make things very interesting for Iowa right now is at 184. Going into the season, they had Cash Welke, who I believe is ranked number 9 at the weight. I believe he's a senior. If he's not a senior, he's a junior. And then you had Nelson Brands, who really should be at 174 or 165. The problem is that at 170 or at 165, we have the number 2 guy in the nation, or Iowa has the number 2 guy in the nation. At 174, they have a guy who right now is number 3 in the nation. And Nelson Brands is a little unproven. He's had some opportunities at some other open tournaments like the Midlands, and it's not as though he's won them in the past. So it's not as though there's reason to believe that he should be starting over those guys. So they're giving him some opportunities here at 184. I'm not sure what the deal with Wilkie is right now, why Wilkie wasn't in the lineup, whether he's a little injured as well and they're kind of protecting him in the same way they might be doing with Murin, or whether it's one of those things where just the timing worked out where it made sense to give Brands a shot at a ranked guy last week. He won, and now you're just riding the hot hand. But whatever the case may be, Brands gets the win here. A little, I mean, I guess it's not that controversial. It was a takedown, but here's the still of it. But you have about 4 seconds left in the overtime period when it lands. Colbray gets up right away, so at least he gets his escape. But this here was enough to score the 2 points for Brands. Then Colbray cuts him, has 30 seconds to work to try to get a takedown, doesn't do so, and Brands pulls the upset. So for Brands, that's 2 straight wins against ranked opponents. Now he has one against the number 5 guy in the nation. As far as how he's looked doing it, it's not as though he's been dominant against either of them. Obviously, he wasn't dominant against Colbray. So for him, he's showing that he belongs in there with the best guys. It's not like he's way better. It's not as though if you put him in a tournament with the best guys, you can just assume they're just going to mop the floor with them. But he can definitely compete too. So how does that compare against a guy like Cash Wilkie, a guy in Cash Wilkie who had a win over Taylor Vans last year? I guess that remains to be seen. But I think for this 184 spot for Iowa, the Midlands is really going to go a long way in determining who's going to have this spot locked up, because both of them are going to be in the same bracket, I'm sure. And whoever wins that bracket, or whoever does the best in that bracket, is most likely to have the spot moving forward, and that would likely mean into the Big Ten season and also into Big Tens. Obviously, whoever does better at Midlands, if they start losing some matches in the Big Ten season, they could get replaced and then have that effect where they end up. But we'll have to see where they go from there. Final 2 matches, we had Jacob Warner with a major decision win over Joel Shapiro, and then we had Anthony Cassiope, though he wasn't able to get a pin, was very dominant against Gannon Gremmel, a big opportunity for him against a ranked heavyweight, and looked really good out there. Didn't give up any points, was able to control from top anytime he got on top. Wasn't able to get any turns, but looked very good. So if you're a Hawkeye fan, you got to be pretty happy with how this meet went, and pretty happy about the future for your team.